I mean, this is a common sense decision.
I would say, just last question, who picked this company? Because President Trump, a few months ago, in a New York Times article said, I have a guy who's unbelievable at doing swimming pools. He looked at it, he called me up, he said, sir, we can do something on it. Last night, he posted on Truth Social, also, I did not give out the contract, Interior did, to a contractor I did not know and have never used before. So Interior, he's talking about you. Did you give this $13 million no-bid contract to this company that's never done business with the federal government before?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Welcome back to Freedom Forge. If you believe in truth, accountability, and putting the American people first, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stay locked in, because today we're breaking down another Senate hearing that should have every American paying attention. In this hearing, we're watching lawmakers question a federal agency official about a range of issues, from wildfire preparedness in the West to controversial decisions involving national holidays, and most importantly, a questionable $13 million no-bid government contract tied to the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. What starts as a routine oversight hearing quickly turns into something much bigger. Questions about priorities, transparency, and whether the government is really serving the people or just protecting itself.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. I want to start first with a letter that myself and Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado wrote to your agency on April 29th. This was a letter of April 29th of this year in regards to the historically low snowpack that we're experiencing, as you know, in the Rocky Mountain West, including in Colorado. Obviously, very concerned about the wildfire season that is upon us. The letter makes a number of requests around pre-positioning assets, extending federal contracts for aerial resources. I would just ask for your commitment to respond to that letter, if you might be willing to make that commitment.
Yeah, absolutely, and appreciate your attention to this. We are facing a potentially dangerous situation with the low water levels in the Colorado River Basin relative to wildfire, and that's why, again, we appreciate all the support we can get from you in unifying the new U.S. Wildland Firefighting Group. That's going to allow us to have essentially a joint chiefs of staff that can make the command and control decisions that you're asking us to look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and we look forward to your response on that front. I want to follow up on a point that the ranking member referenced. This is in regards to a decision that your agency made last year in December, as you know, removing the 2 federal holidays that honor Black history from the free entrance day list for the National Park Service. You're familiar with that decision?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I believe those 2 days, by the way, are Martin Luther King Day, as you know, and Juneteenth. It's my view that Juneteenth provides all citizens with an opportunity to really recommit ourselves, renew our commitment to equality. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess part of my confusion about why, given your agreement on that front, given the fact that as governor, you proclaimed Juneteenth back in North Dakota several years ago, why you would now allow the agency, or I presume you were involved in that decision, to remove those 2 holidays from the list. It just strikes me that that is not consistent with the view that you just articulated. And I would urge the National Park Service to reverse that decision. I think it is short-sighted, and I don't think it's in the best interest of the country. I recognize my colleagues disagree with me on the other side of the aisle, perhaps some of them, but that's my view. I want to ask you about one last topic.
Can I just say, I want to make sure on that,
Sure.
on that topic that we understand that no one is changing these holidays, the holiday designation, whatever. There was an ability to choose free days, and part of that was, where do we space the free days? Where do we put them? Do they match up against weekends?
Yeah, but Mr. Secretary,
and again, trying to get more of those days into the summer months when we have higher visitation.
I hear you. At the same time, I think you could understand how many Americans would perceive a decision by your department to remove Martin Luther King Day as a free entrance day, the National Park Service. I just, at the end of the day, again, we'll have to agree to disagree on that front, but I will move on. Are you familiar with Atlantic Industrial Coatings?
I'm not familiar with that.
So Atlantic Industrial Coatings is
you're saying
company. Are you familiar with that company?
You're saying Atlantic?
Atlantic Industrial Coatings, correct? Are you familiar with it, or?
I'm not familiar with Atlantic.
Okay, Atlantic Industrial Coatings is the company that received a no-bid federal contract for the project at the Lincoln Memorial Reflective Pool. Are you familiar with that now? Is that,
I'm familiar with that project, yes.
but not the company?
I wasn't familiar with that specific name of the company.
Okay. You're familiar with the fact that a company received a no-bid contract to do the work on that project, correct?
I'm familiar that we're working on a project to restore the reflecting pool before the summer season with record attendance, yes.
Yes, and that was through a no-bid $13 million contract, right? That's not up for debate, that's a
But
fact.
I'm positive that we followed all of the required bidding rules, so you're
Well, let me ask you that
you're
question
emphasizing the word no bid like something nefarious has happened. and
Okay, then
I reject
explain
that
it to me.
thesis.
Here, I'll ask you the question. My understanding of the federal procurement rules is that a no-bid contract is reserved for situations where, quote, any delay would cause serious injury to the government. What is your proposition is what? That there'd be serious injury to the government if this company didn't get the $13 million contract to do this particular project right now? Is that
Well, I think we do have a sense of urgency. I mean, we got handed a record amount of deferred maintenance. We had 19 fountains across the city that didn't work,
that's
82
the
homeless
serious
sites.
injury to
1,000
the government? The serious injury to the government?
Well, I'm not I suppose a lawyer could decide that, but I think that maybe all of us could agree that we would want to have our nation's capital looking great for the 250th. I mean, this is a common sense decision.
I would say, just last question, who picked this company? Because President Trump, a few months ago, in a New York Times article said, I have a guy who's unbelievable at doing swimming pools. He looked at it, he called me up, he said, sir, we can do something on it. Last night, he posted on Truth Social, also, I did not give out the contract, Interior did, to a contractor I did not know and have never used before. So Interior, he's talking about you. Did you give this $13 million no-bid contract to this company that's never done business with the federal government before?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I think the Secretary can answer the question.
The gentleman that you're talking about that has done construction work regarding pools and fountains for President Trump is not part of this contract. He's just a citizen that cared about it and offered some free advice. There's nothing there in terms of any dollars flowing to anybody that worked for President Trump.
Who picked this company? That's what I'm getting at.
The National Park Service
going
and
to-
the
we're
leaders
going
on
to
the
move
National
on.
Mall are the ones that picked it. They went through the process, picked the person that was best, and part of their selection process was picking somebody who had the capability to complete the project in a time frame and in a budget that would actually fix the problem. I mean, there are past presidents that have worked on this thing. It's been shut for 2 years. Read the article. There was $38 million spent on this between 2010 and 2012, and it was never fixed. I mean, this is
Secretary, we're going to move on, and some of these questions, if you want to refer or answer them in writing when there's more time.
Now, let's get into it. Right off the bat, the discussion opens with concerns about wildfire risks due to historically low snowpack in places like Colorado. And look, this is serious. When water levels drop and wildfire risks increase, that's not political, that's reality. The senator is asking for preparedness, coordination, and action. That's exactly what government is supposed to do: anticipate problems and act before disaster strikes. But here's the thing. This is where Americans start to lose trust. Because while they're talking about wildfire readiness on one hand, we quickly pivot into something that raises eyebrows across the board: priorities. The hearing moves into a decision by the National Park Service to remove Martin Luther King Jr. Day and Juneteenth from its free entrance days list. Now think about that. These are not just random dates. These are significant moments in American history, days meant to reflect unity, progress, and the values we claim to stand for as a nation. And what's the explanation? Scheduling, logistics, trying to move free days into the summer months for higher attendance. That might sound reasonable on the surface, but let's be honest. Americans aren't stupid. When you remove days tied to major historical and cultural significance, people are going to question your judgment. It sends a message, intentional or not. And in a country already divided, these kinds of decisions don't help. They make things worse. Now, here's where things really start heating up. The senator brings up Atlantic Industrial Coatings, a company most people have never even heard of. And suddenly, we're talking about a $13 million no-bid contract tied to a project at one of the most iconic locations in America, the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. No bid. Let that sink in. In the private sector, if you handed out a multi-million-dollar contract without competition, people would be asking serious questions. But in government, somehow, it's business as usual. The justification given is urgency. They say delays could cause harm, that the project needed to be done quickly, that the nation's capital needs to look good for major events. And sure, nobody wants Washington, D.C. looking run down. But urgency should never be an excuse for abandoning transparency. Because here's the real issue. When you bypass competitive bidding, you remove accountability. You remove the opportunity to ensure taxpayers are getting the best value. And most importantly, you open the door to favoritism, waste, and abuse. The senator presses hard, and rightfully so. Who picked this company? Why this company? What qualifies them? And perhaps the biggest question of all, why has this project already seen tens of millions of dollars spent in the past with little to show for it? That's not just inefficiency. That's a pattern. And then we get into the connection, or lack thereof, to Donald Trump. The senator brings up statements suggesting Trump mentioned someone skilled in pool construction. Immediately, the question becomes, was there influence? Was there favoritism? Was this contract politically motivated? The response? Denial. Deflection. There's nothing there. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. But here's the problem. The American people shouldn't have to guess. The process should be so transparent, so airtight, that there's no room for doubt. Instead, what we're seeing is the same old Washington playbook. Vague answers, passing responsibility, kicking the can down the road. And let me say this clearly, this is why people are fed up. Americans are working harder than ever, paying taxes, struggling with inflation, dealing with rising costs. And then they see $13 million handed out with no competitive process. They hear that $38 million was already spent years ago on the same problem, and it still wasn't fixed. That's not just frustrating. That's unacceptable. Now look, I'm all for maintaining our national landmarks. I'm all for investing in infrastructure. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And when transparency takes a back seat, trust disappears. This hearing shows exactly why oversight matters. It shows why tough questions need to be asked. And it shows why Americans must stay engaged, because if you're not paying attention, this kind of thing just keeps happening. At the end of the day, this isn't about left or right. It's about accountability. It's about whether the government works for the people or operates above them. And from what we just watched, there's still a lot of questions that haven't been answered. If you want more breakdowns like this, if you care about truth, transparency, and holding power accountable, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Freedom Forge, and stay tuned because we're just getting started.